And of course, the gentle flamenco sounds of a beautiful Spanish guitar can only mean one thing. It is time for the Port Authority Podcast, your weekly foray into all things wine, whiskey, fine dining, cigars, and really just learning to appreciate the nicer, the finer things in life.
The Epicurean lifestyle.
The Epicurean lifestyle. As always, I am Reverend Krause, your host with the most. With me as the nimble navigator of the good ship Port Authority Podcast, with one eye tied firmly behind his back, with which he can better express all rest of the remaining senses he has, and our man of the master controller of all things in the wonderful world of cheese, Evan Wheeler.
The best intro I've ever been given in my entire life. Thank you, brother.
And of course, if this is your first time tuning in or you haven't tuned in a while, be sure to go back and check last week's episode out, where we had both David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar live in studio, where we talked about Van Halen, the new winery from the band members of Van Halen. And of course, their premiere label coming out, hitting stores in May, is the Best of Both Worlds, the world's first red and white blend.
You know, music lovers are really going to want to check that episode out, especially of the wine varietal. Quite a good episode. Great guests, friendly guys. Really lucky we got to have them on.
You know, and I think it's fantastic that they were able to put the beef aside, so to speak. A lot of people don't know this. They had not spoken to each other in about 30 years prior to doing the podcast. They didn't even communicate in person when setting up Van Halen. It was all done through lawyers and
Their various
various other intermediaries. You know, it was a real David Gilmour, Roger Waters situation. We're still trying to get that Pink Floyd rosé on the books, but they're a little bit tougher nuts to crack.
Really, truly honored for them to come back together again on our podcast of all places here. You know, definitely a high honor.
Absolutely. And as we do every week, before we get to Evan's update in the wonderful world of cheese, we do have some viewer mail to get to.
Oh, yes. Let's see what the listeners have to say.
So Chuck from Cedar Rapids wrote into us, is there an appropriate time to send back a bottle at a restaurant, or does it always make me look like an insufferable bastard?
Hard to avoid that one, Chuck. Sorry, Hadu, but we'll try to answer your question here to the best of our ability.
I would say if it's oaked or corked, not oaked, if it's oaked, you can get it out of there, but because that implies it's a Chardonnay, and white wine doesn't count. But, you know, corked, oxidized, some sort of flaw in it, maybe, you know, and of course, if the restaurant you're eating at has a sommelier, and they should, I'm sure they'd be willing to take a taste before accepting it back, but Ev, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. You know, you get that first sip, you know, that your server usually provides to you right upon opening the bottle. And it can be tough, a little tough, at least at first, to know whether something is really up to your standard or up to par, right? Just off the cuff like that. It might take another couple of sips before you really get to understand that it isn't what you wanted or that it isn't any good.
And, you know, the fact of the matter remains, sometimes you just got to bite the bullet. And you know what? If I said it on the one podcast, I'll say it on every other. That fucking Dominus that burned me for $250 because somebody decided to do a year early. But anyway, our next question. My spouse insists that pairing wine with takeout pizza is gauche. Do you have a rebuttal I can deliver with a glass of Chianti in hand? I feel like this is a good one for you.
Well, yeah, as a connoisseur of frozen pizzas, I will say that I am definitely not above pairing a good wine with a frozen pizza. We'll take a sponsorship. I'm not going to name names, but I think that you can all probably guess which one my favorite is. It's not delivery, it's frozen pizza. I would say, you know, your wife, I think, is just wrong. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to have an opinion that's not correct. I'm going to sit here and say, I'll die on this hill. pairing a pretty decent wine. I'm not going to say more expensive.
I like how you assume it's the wife. I said spouse.
Oh, well, excuse me.
Evan is single, ladies. No,
I am assuming.
he's just assumes you're wrong.
But I will say it's fun. It's fun to pair, something I'd say cheaper than $30. I don't think I'm spending any much more money than that on something I'm going to eat with a frozen pizza. But if it's Papa Murphy's take and bake, feel free to knock that up a couple extra bucks.
I feel like it's actually going to get paired with three things, which for me would be the red wine, the pizza, and a generic omeprazole. Because that is the highway to acid reflux at 2 a.m.
It's actually interesting you bring up acid reflux. That's sort of something I'll be talking about here in just a little bit.
Do you want to give us a teaser before we do our last couple of questions?
Well, I'll just say it involves medical conditions and cheese and cheese's ability to perhaps improve said medical symptoms.
Curative medicinal cheese, dare I say?
I don't know if we'll go that far, but I'll say when I get to it, you'll see what I'm saying.
Is it covered under my HMO?
And something tells me not quite until I iron out the additional research. That's what's going to be required here. But back to listeners' mail though.
So we got a couple of more here. Let's see. I constantly hear that you say we need to let the wine breathe. What happens if it hyperventilates? I'm asking for a bottle of Syrah I may have decanted too early.
Yeah, you don't want a wine that's been on a tough 30, a half-mile run or something like that.
That's not necessarily true if you remember the 14 hands.
Oh, well.
We let that bitch run for 3 days.
We with the cork in, though. It wasn't.
Oh, it was open.
It was in. I remember taking out the cork. I had loosely put the cork back in.
It was definitely open and sitting on the counter. Now, you may have popped the cork in several days later. For everyone who doesn't remember what we're talking about, Evan and I used to live together, and we had got a bottle of Chateau Ste. Michelle 14 Hands, a Running Wild edition. It's a $15 bottle of red wine.
Well, I'll say it's not a bad $15 bottle of red wine.
It's probably not. But it is a $15 bottle.
Yeah, well, it was perfectly serviceable.
It was, and we opened it, and we drank maybe a glass each, and we're like, well, this is drinkable. And this is no shot to Chateau Ste. Michelle. They have bottles that are $15 and they have bottles that are $55 and up. And I prefer the Ethos line because I am a fancy bitch. But that being said, we let it sit open for 3 days. Now, maybe the cork made its way in there at some point. I don't remember, but I do remember we got off work on a Monday night and we poured the rest of that bottle, expecting it to maybe even have a slight vinegariness to it.
And a little bit of sour taste.
And both of us distinctly remember how absolutely fantastic that bottle was.
We were shocked, frankly. I remember thinking, just as Ethan was saying a second ago, that it might have even begun to turn a little bit. I mean, being open for that long, you would really think, I'm not so sure about this. However, I think that there was just enough.
10 hours earlier might have been perfect.
Yeah.
If we had known to wake up at 3 a.m. on a Monday morning.
A prime wine drink.
But 3 a.m. on a Monday, the prime wine hour before you get to, and it was like middle of February, so we would have had to be a little stoked for the drive in for work, if you know what I mean.
But, this is not an experiment that we have repeated, and I think maybe we should for a future episode.
I think we take a number of the cheap seats, and maybe we do, is we put a number of the so-called ways to make the cheap bottles better. You're hyper decanting in the blender.
Mm-hmm. The rabbit pour.
Yeah, the rabbit pour over. Yeah, we could take a look at all of that and maybe see which one works best for science.
Of course, for science. Maybe we'll even make a 2-part episode where the first episode will be the initial tasting of each bottle, and then the second episode will be the part two.
We probably should just do it with one bottle as the control.
Yeah, fair enough.
So, but we still have a decent amount to drink through. And for those of you not watching the live feed, which is everyone because there is no live feed. We do make sure to finish the whole bottle every time, regardless of how many there are. So sometimes by the end of the show, we fix it in post. Let's just say that's our watchword.
We're nothing if not thorough.
We are dumping it back there.
and nothing will go to waste.
All right, final. We'll do this one feels like a troll, but this is our final viewer mail for today.
We welcome responses, any and all.
We do. We do. It says, Dear Evan and Ethan, I once ordered steak well done at a Michelin star restaurant and met with glares from the staff. Should I change my cooking preference or change my dining companions?
Oh, now that's an interesting potential alternative. I mean, objectively, on its face. And look, we value all of our listeners, especially those that write in. So thank you very much for your comments. We're not here necessarily.
No. Why learn to enjoy steak the way it's meant to be enjoyed when you could just get different friends? I think that this is an ample time to tell this person that whatever friend group they have that's afforded them the opportunity to go as a group to a Michelin-starred restaurant, he needs to exchange those people for the Applebee's crowd.
Well, wait, am I confused here? I was thinking he was the one who had ordered the well-done steak, and he was experiencing the glares from either his friends or the other.
The between the lines here is that it wasn't his choice to go Michelin star.
Oh, gotcha. I thought he's about predators.
And I say he under the assumption that this is a he. This is a genderless person. So they
Sure.
ordered their steak well done at a Michelin star restaurant and was met with glares from the staff. So should I change my cooking preference? To meet the current group of friends that I have? Medium well or medium rare, excuse me. Or should I get new friends that like to go places where I can order the steak that the way I like it?
I think that this could come down to a self-confidence thing. I mean, look, if truly your preference is well done, and that's not my preference. I know it's not Ethan's preference. I know it's clearly not.
No. Some things should be illegal.
See, I'm trying to be as fair to our listeners as possible here. I would tend to agree with you. However, if you don't have a problem with the way you're ordering, then I would say keep ordering the way you're ordering, but understand that you will get glares. If you're okay with that, fine, so be it. And there's nothing wrong with being exposed to some Michelin star quality food. You might have enjoyed X, Y, or Z other things that were there that were not the steak as well. Nothing wrong with getting some additional perspective. But I would agree with Ethan, perhaps you're more suited to another quality of restaurant establishment.
So the kind that knows to bring ketchup on the side.
But I'd say good for you, though, for going with your friends to a Michelin star restaurant. I think that's admirable. Hold on. Sometimes it takes you trying steak a different way or meat a different way. Cooked a little bit less well done for you to
Look, imagine this guy was at like the French Laundry in Chicago.
Well, okay.
They have 5 chefs there dedicated just to the bean soup.
Oh, I can imagine.
The bean soup. And that's one of, a million things on the menu. And you go in to this fantastic place thinking better.
Well, I didn't necessarily get the impression from this listener, at least what they were writing.
This person's really the chatters their entire friend group just so they can keep ordering cow burnt to a crisp.
If that's what this listener is implying in their comment, then I'm with you. I'm with you.
You smell that? That's the smell of a 430 credit score.
Ethan is sparing no punch here when it comes to this listener. I'll have to see. I don't know if it is truly my opinion is better than everyone else's, and I'm above the Michelin star restaurant staff that were glaring at me as I made this order. Then you know what? I have to say you should probably check yourself before you wreck yourself, bud.
I mean, I'm of the opinion that this person has already wrecked themselves. And yes. Whoever you are, Mr. or Miss, they, anonymous, get new friends. Yours will certainly be fine without you. We have other viewer mail, but none of it as compelling as what we had just read. We may pull into some of it in the next future episodes or in the lucrative secret show we've been known to drop every Tuesday. However, we'll cut that short for today because Evan has medicinal cheese They may or may not be covered by my HMO. We'll see.
Allegedly medicinal cheese, and we'll get into that here right now. This was a
Medicinal government cheese.
medicinal government cheese, although something tells me probably the cheese is of a slightly higher quality than that, although the cheese type was not specified. We can all make our own assumptions as informed readers. I will say I came across this article in Food and Wine, although I'm aware that this was a study that Food and Wine is referencing as they're writing this article.
You have a source for that?
Oh, well, I'm sure I could pull up the actual original source, but so right now my source is Food and Wine.
Reddit's having an aneurysm already.
Oh, Reddit can go suck themselves. So, a December 2024 study in Sleep Medicine found a relationship between cheese consumption and a reduced risk of sleep apnea. Now, what I was going to say, I think 50% of this podcast might find this very compelling.
Okay. You have my attention, sir.
So, for those of us not in the know, at least among the listeners out there, sleep apnea is a common condition that affects about 30 million people in the U.S. It's actually a lot more than I would have thought. Characterized by repeated breathing stoppages during sleep, leading to health issues like heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. And this article was saying, and allegedly this research article was saying, that the study analyzed data from 400,000 people and found that cheese eaters had a 28% lower risk of developing sleep apnea. Biomarkers that were related or identified, at least in this study, researchers identified 6 biomarkers, for example, testosterone, diastolic blood pressure, influenced by cheese consumption that may relate to sleep apnea risk. So I suppose there were 4 others that they're not mentioning specifically there. But
what if you have sleep apnea? How much cheese do I need to eat?
Yeah, I mean, if
to get a good night's sleep?
If we're saying you already in the sleep apnea danger zone, and maybe this study was saying that in order to preemptively prevent maybe sleep apnea, I don't know, that would be zone. I mean, to be fair, buddy, we were already consuming quite a bit of
that Costco block of Manchego was a staple for a while.
Exactly. So study limitations. The study only shows a correlation and not necessarily any causation. And the sample was primarily of folks within the cohort who were of European descent, and the type and amount of cheese was actually not specified. So that's kind of, where you were saying,
well, European descent, it's a good start right there for me, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, us here on this podcast of a mix of British Isles and German and Italian descent for sure. I mean, that's definitely European for sure.
But the bastards didn't say what kind of cheese. There's got to be something that's better than others.
No, you would think, well, I mean, look, it's definitely not Cheese Whip or...
Turns out, Velveeta.
Velveeta. Oh, God.
Just stick with the sleep app.
Yeah, I don't think that I could stomach the intestinal issues that I'm going with. Oh, my gosh. And so the potential benefits of cheese, at least it was mentioned that cheese's nutrient composition, so proteins, calcium, fatty acids, and vitamins, may contribute to positive physical changes such as lower blood pressure and reduced testosterone, which can help prevent sleep apnea. And counterintuitive findings, despite cheese being calorie dense and potentially linked to weight gain, which increase sleep apnea risk, it may offer benefits through its impact on biomarkers. So, again, things to remember. Moderation is still recommended. The American Heart Disease Association recommends up to 3 servings of cheese per day. Actually, wait, what? Moderation per day for sleep apnea prevention. The American Heart Association recommends up to, so limited to 3 servings of cheese per day. That's actually surprisingly high. I would have thought maybe fewer than 2.
I'm trying to think if I've hit 3
or fewer.
Better get another one in.
Yeah, I know. You got to slide in your recommended daily.
Now, do they say anything about Cheez-Its?
Something tells me that the powdered cheese flavoring on the outside of Cheez-Its, or even in Cheez-Its itself, is probably not...
All right, what about the Ritz cheese-filled snack crackers? The little ones? Yeah.
Probably closer to Velveeta than actual cheese, if I'm guessing.
Combos are right out.
Although, at the combos are right out. If there's probably something to this study, I would have to imagine that Cheetos and Cheez-Its and all of these others would be advertising this on either TV or on the box.
9 out of 10 doctors recommend original strength Cheetos.
For sleep apnea, it'll show somebody with a sleep mask on the front of the thumbs up.
But just like You can see the Cheeto dust finger on CPAP. Some fat dude just trying to sneak one under the CPAP.
Oh my gosh. Well, so, and just to finish it up, to additional prevention strategies. The study did say to maintain a healthy weight, avoid trigger foods. Excuse me. For example, acid reflux causing foods. That was tying into what you were saying earlier, and make lifestyle changes like regular exercise and eat a balanced diet. So again, if your balanced diet consists of 3 or fewer cheese servings, then you're probably fine.
But what if it's only cheese?
What is that? OMAD, that 1 meal a day. So
One meal a day, and it's only cheese.
it's only cheese. Yeah, exactly.
OMAD C.
So yeah, that was my
Some fitness YouTuber we're gonna be hearing from, I'm sure.
yeah, about how they can't get to their fitness anymore because they're on the toilet too much.
Yeah, well, it's what happens if you eat too much Tillamook sharp cheddar. I could tell you, 2 Christmases ago I went cesarean.
An oldie but a goodie.
Oh, an oldie but a goodie. I mean, not for me.
Yeah, not exactly.
They still haven't properly sealed.
You need to get some sutures. Who knows? Yeah. So anyway, that was my cheese news finding of the day.
The update on cheese is very important.
It is.
We have our first bottle. Shall we take a foray?
Yes. Yeah, we shall. I think.
Not the featured bottle of the night. But an oldie but a goodie. This is Earthquake Zin by Michael David. Fantastic bottle, goes for about $20. Deep, dark, red, juicy, jammy. This is the perfect I don't know wine, but I have to bring something bottle. Honestly, most of the Michael Davids are that way.
Because you can always count on the fact that it'll be good.
Yeah, and it's never it's very balanced. Nobody
Do you remember the year on this bottle?
I suppose we could look.
Okay.
2021.
2021. All right. Well, cheers, bud.
2021. Oh, yeah. Big jammy nose.
Oh, but honestly, so pleasant. And I'll be honest. I think I'll say this. I enjoy this more than the cab by the same label.
Earthquake cab? Yeah.
Earthquake cab. Yeah. And that's not to say the Earthquake cab is not good. It's just there's a little bit more, I feel like, of a complex flavor going on with this particular bottle. I've actually got some notes on this.
Oh.
That I found online, just some general information if any of the listeners are curious about this particular label itself.
And again, this is Earthquake Zin by Michael David.
Yep. And it's actually Michael and David Winery. It's a wine produced by Michael and David Winery, located in the Lodi region of California. The winery is situated in the heart of the Lodi AVA, or American Viticultural Area, which is renowned for its ideal conditions for growing Zinfandel grapes. And here's a little bit of history on the Michael and David Winery origins. The winery was founded by brothers Michael and David Phillips in 1984. And the Phillips family has a long history in farming dating back to the early 1900s, where their great-grandfather first purchased land in the Lodi region. The family's agricultural roots run deep, as they initially farmed a variety of crops, including tomatoes and almonds, before transitioning to grape farming. And apparently had a focus on Zinfandel. The Lodi region is particularly well suited for Zinfandel due to its warm climate and old vine vineyards. Michael and David Winery embraced Zin as their flagship varietal, and their Earthquake Zin quickly became one of their standout wines.
And I think that's a lot of the reason why their Zin is better than the cab, because they're both Lodi. But then cab would be, and again, it's not that you can't grow a cab in Lodi. Everybody knows you can grow a cab anywhere. Some places are better than others. You got Napa right next door, though. Let them do the cabs. Lodi, much more situated for your Zin. And it's hitting on all cylinders, honestly. I mean, this is a $20 bottle that if you wanted to slap, a premier, winemaker label on there, let's say, some Caymus offshoot decided to do a Zin, which I'm pretty sure they are, and they are charging $50 for it. You probably could and get away with it. I've had much worse for much less.
I think
Much worse for much more money.
Yes, I think the most expensive I've seen this bottle, because we paid, what was this, 20 to 25 for that.
This one was just, I think the cab's more expensive.
It is. I think those I paid
$8.99.
40 to 50 for the cab. I remember paying, I think, high 30s, low 40s for the Earthquake cab.
Really?
Yeah, in previous years. Back in Gateway. At least I saw it listed for that
Wow.
back in the day. So maybe it's not going for that much these days, but at least I do recall having paid that much for this label.
Well, if that had been back in, now I kind of catch my words. I do remember there were a couple of Lodi years like 2015, 2016 that were exceptional, where I know that they bumped up a couple of points in the rating scale. Not like we saw back in 07 or 08 Napa. Oh my God.
But you were right. It was definitely mid to later 20-teens when I recall.
They were hitting the mid 90s on the Metacritic, if you will. And that can always justify a fun price increase.
And yeah, just to finish out a little bit more information about the label itself, the Earthquake label is a reference to both the power and intensity, allegedly, of the wine, as well as the region's seismic history. Lodi has experienced significant...
allegedly.
No, allegedly in terms of the power and intensity of the wine.
It's a full-bodied wine.
It is. It's good. And I think that the Earthquake label is certainly creative, and their rebranding in terms of the new artwork on the label. For those of you that might be familiar with the old label, that was also pretty sweet looking. This one has a little bit more...
I honestly can't say which one I like more. This is new, and I'll give them the rebrand. It'd be bad if the wine wasn't good.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I did enjoy the old one, too. That's probably why it took me a minute to find this one, because they changed it, because it had that distinctive black and white Richter scale on there.
Absolutely. I mean, you see the Earthquake name, and you're like, oh, but I don't recognize the label at all. Yeah, it took us a second to figure out it was the same thing. Wine style. Earthquake Zin is known for its rich, full-bodied character with bold flavors of dark fruit, spice, and often hints of oak.
Let me guess, 91 points.
Actually, that's a great point. I didn't get the pointage on this. I'm sure we could look that up. Wouldn't you mind?
Can we take a moment real quick?
Yeah.
Wine ratings are bullshit.
Yeah. I think a lot of it is marketing. Doesn't most of it go to the one individual who's in charge of the rating system? I forget.
No, there's a number, because it'll be, you'll see like, because there isn't just one rater out there. But like Food and Wine Magazine's a big one. Wine Enthusiast is another. But like the lowest I've ever seen them score something was like 87 points.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, if everything is a 90-point wine, then nothing is a 90-point wine.
Unless there are truly wines that just aren't being picked up by, the individual distributors. And
well, what's our curve?
Things
like farm.
Well, hey, we still see that at the end, yeah, because it sells. I mean, it's just not going to be scored.
Oh, yeah, but if you notice that the wine is in quotation marks on the boots or label.
Sort of like Oreo dessert treat, as opposed to, they can't call it ice cream. But no, it's the dairy content is too low.
Yeah. What the fuck else is in it?
So anyway, yeah, the wine is typically made from mulled vines, Zinfandel grapes, contributing to its complex and concentrated profile. All right, well, I was hoping to get a little bit more information. But either way,
we're here with the wine, and it definitely is. It's bold, it's fruit forward, it's jammy, it's juicy. It's not a hot weather wine at all. I would say it's not even an early fall wine. You want to be in at least the 50s or below.
It is a little sweeter on the front of the tongue.
Is sweet the right word though? Because it's not sugary like a Moscato.
Sure.
It's still a dry wine. This isn't a dessert wine.
Yeah, I would say though, for a person who might only prefer sweeter wines, I'm not trying to say that it's too sweet. That's not what I intend with this comment, but this would be a decent compromise to help someone.
Fruit forward might be the word.
Yes, someone who is, not going to be into a totally dry wine.
Right.
Yeah. And that, it has a little bit of spiciness to it that I appreciate, that almost is not too dissimilar from a Malbec, depending on the type of Malbec and the location. It's not smoky like
I'm not following.
A little spicy. We'll put it this way, spicy in a way that the Cave is not.
Oh, maybe just a hint on the end. I'll give you that. A little black pepper.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we always strive for the it only has to look expensive on this show. And this is one of those bottles that is exactly that. If you need to bring a crowd pleaser, especially to a group that doesn't know wine or doesn't know it as well as you, the listener of this show, do because of us. But this is absolutely fantastic. Nobody needs to know that you didn't pay that much for it. Everyone will appreciate it. And as far as a region goes, this is California in a bottle. I mean, it just is. The big, jammy, fruit-forward, dark red wine, really good legs in the glass, perfect nose, gives you that sort of a smell of fresh grapes on the vine, which you look for in any of those big California bottles. It's all there. It's punching way above its price point. Like I said, you can't go wrong. Michael David, Earthquake, find it, buy it, drink it. You're going to love it. If you don't, fuck you. You don't know, you don't have class or taste.
We don't hold our opinions back here, folks. Always. And if you've been listening to us, hopefully that's something you appreciate. I
don't believe in the relativism of viewpoints. They are not all held equal, and some people are just wrong.
I guess I try to be the even-keeled voice on this show, and Ethan he'll tell you how he really feels.
That's exactly right.
But yeah, take it from us. We enjoy it. It's a fun label, and anybody that you bring around will enjoy it as well. We guarantee.
We are going to pause for a brief moment to inject the word from our sponsors. And we are back. An important note, when we go to take sponsors, what we really do is we just sit and we drink a couple of glasses from the bottle because we don't have any sponsors.
Be crying into our wine glasses.
Crying into our wine glasses. As always, Caymus Vineyards, the Wagner family of wine. We are looking for sponsors. We don't really want money, just free product. That would be wonderful. And I promise to be a complete corporate sellout and shill for your products every single time and give them a glowing review, regardless of quality, which isn't a problem because in the Caymus family of wine, quality is above all else. I don't know if that's their actual slogan, but yeah. So Chuck Wagner, if you're out there, if you're selling or if you're buying, we're selling.
It's the slogan you've created on their behalf.
That's right.
Also, any cheese sponsors, if you're out there,
any cheese sponsor.
Also, possibly, zero sugar A&W, please.
Really?
Oh, it's delicious.
What's the difference between that and Diet A&W?
Oh, it tastes better than Diet, man.
But they're both zero sugar.
Well, but Diet has that funny aftertaste.
But what's the difference?
I mean, on your body chemistry, probably not much of a difference at all. But as far as the taste is concerned, I could personally always taste Diet versus zero sugar.
I could taste Diet versus sugar. That's for certain.
Oh, I don't know about that. I'm just saying, Diet anyway, whatever. A&W, please, thank you.
Our other shameless plug that we would love to shamelessly plug every time, Boar's Head Provisions. If anybody from Boar's Head Provisions is out there, my God, we're not even asking for much, just like a weekly box of meats and cheeses to go with the wine we drank. And to be completely honest, we're willing to change this into a Caymus and Boar's Head podcast. It'll be an hour-long advertisement for Caymus and Boar's Head, and by God, we'll do it and we'll make it sound right. I will be the Paul Harvey of the modern age, championing Boar's Head and Caymus wines to the end of the earth. If only you would send us free product.
I think we just got to pump up these podcast numbers, buddy.
We gotta pump up these podcast numbers.
So please, listeners, share with friends and family.
That's right. As a good bottle of wine is best shared with company, so is our podcast. And also, you know somebody in your circle that lacks both class and taste, and at the very least, we can give them taste.
And as far as class, I think, do we have some additional questions?
We do. I kept our first questions kind of on topic, but these are a little bit more variety. Maybe might be the right word here. Let's see. I had a really good. Here it is. Dear Port Authority Podcast, is it ever appropriate to bring one's own caviar to a dinner party? Or is this the culinary equivalent to arriving with your own condiments?
Interesting.
I don't think it's the culinary equivalent. I think it is arriving with your own condiments.
Yeah. I'll put it this way, caviar is not the main dish. It's definitely a garnish, right? I mean, anyway, but if you're in a position to, first of all, I'll just say, if you're in a position of bringing your own caviar to parties, I mean, you know what? Good for you. Honestly, hats off.
I think I'm going to quote, it was either my first or second grade teacher, Mrs. Lurchner, when I showed up with Oreos for myself, and she said, "Did you bring enough for everyone?" Which, if you're going to bring your own caviar, you might as well bring enough for everyone. If you're that person, then
Who is so particular?
is so particular about the caviar, or just, number one, wanting to make sure that there is caviar at the party. If you know that caviar is going to be served, and you bring your own because it's not the right kind of caviar, first of all, I'd like to meet you because I've never met anyone more pretentious than myself. Number two, you're an asshole, and I mean that in the most endearing way possible. And number three, bring enough for everyone. If your caviar is that good, you ought to bring enough for everyone.
Sharing is caring.
Sharing is absolutely caring.
If you are going to be a big enough asshole that you are judging your host, necessarily, maybe not necessarily, for the quality of their provided caviar at the party, then you should be generous enough to your fellow guests and your host to bring some enough at least to share with the group.
And then, yes, you're an asshole, but you are the asshole that brought enough caviar for everyone. And if your particular brand of caviar is that good, which by God, I hope it should be at this point, then you might be doing a service to the party. But real quick, Ev, am I incorrect in saying that this has opened up nicely in the half hour to 45 minutes since we opened this bottle?
Yes, and by this, Ethan is referring to the Earthquake Zinfandel that we opened up here in the first half of the podcast before the ad break.
You're right, Evan. I am referring to the Earthquake Zinfandel that we opened up at the first half of the podcast before the sponsor break by Michael David Wine. Michael David, another potential sponsor of which we, again, have none.
Friend of the podcast, at least in terms of how we enjoy their wine.
Friend of the podcast, or at least a friend of the hosts. Another great winemaker, great label that we would be happy to set our ethics aside and chill for in the event that we should receive any free product.
You're getting dangerous with this set ethics aside commentary that you're making. Our listenership trusts us to give them informed and objective opinions about
Yes, but at least I'm making my biases known.
Fair enough. After our comments, there's a giant asterisk that all of you should be aware of.
Oh, I'll tell you straight up beforehand. I love Michael David. I love Caymus Wine. I love Boar's Head Provisions. There's very little they could do to make me upset with them. And if they did, I would tell you, but they would have to fall very far from grace for that to happen.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think as long as our listeners understand what kind of perspective they're getting, at least on this podcast.
Right. And if they open a Merlot,
I'm leaving.
God, no, Merlot's delicious.
Hang me out to dry like that.
Let's see. We have another question here. This is, I hesitate to say it's something that I would do, but I'm willing to bet it's something you would do.
Something that I would do.
Yes.
And I hear a little bit of judgment.
You would, but hold on, you would do it and you would be right, but people wouldn't quite understand.
Interesting.
Is it wrong to bring a fine Bordeaux to a casual barbecue, or does the art of the pairing transcend the setting?
Interesting.
Yeah, I would say in that situation, yes.
I mean, look, we're talking about a casual backyard barbecue. What, friends and family, cul-de-sac neighbors? What do we got going on?
Well, now I'll give it a caveat. There are people that you and I both know that if they said they were having a barbecue, we would be just fine bringing a fine Bordeaux.
We'd be fully justified. And at that point,
your parents.
Yeah, it just happens that a lot of people that we know and hang out with are similar enough to us in terms of wine enjoyment.
So let's pretend for a moment we are the everyman.
Okay.
And I would say no. A fine Bordeaux notwithstanding, there is a time and a place. And whether or not it pairs well with barbecue, the effect might be lost on folks looking for something more whiskey and cheap light lager.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like the everyman equivalent question to this would be sort of, could I be faulted for bringing a nicer IPA or craft brew 6-pack or 12-pack to,
or dare I say, Miller High Life, the champagne of beers.
Champagne of beers. Yeah, there we go.
Which you're getting the fine folks at Miller Quartz, if you're listening. Specifically, Miller High Life, one of the finest beers around.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's a brand manager for Miller High Life out there who's looking for a small fledgling podcast with which to pimp their product, but here we are out of the corner.
It has perhaps never been more obvious the purpose of this podcast
is for us to get free alcohol, cheese, meats, potentially cigars. And would an Omaha Steaks sponsorship be too much to ask for?
Perfect. Honestly, that fits, I feel like, the demographic.
Yeah, well, I don't need filet. I'm fine with a New York.
Well, if I'm being quite honest, filet's not even my favorite.
No, of course not. But save that for the beef episode, which is coming up later this month.
Absolutely.
Of course, every year we do our salute to beef. And this year is no different than any other. We will be doing our salute to beef before we kick off the spring and summertime months, arming you with all the knowledge you need to know to sound just pompous enough at every backyard barbecue you might find yourself at.
Say salute to beef one more time.
Salute to beef.
Ba-ba-da-da.
I was going to fix that in toast, but okay. Any more thoughts on a Bordeaux to a barbecue? A Bardobecue. Sorry, out of that.
This tortured, but I appreciate
it. Made it out there.
The Bordarbage. Yes, final thoughts. I would say, look, you got to know your audience. Just like the previous question, sort of similar, honestly, with the caviar. I mean, look, if it's a situation where you just know that walking into it, the people that you'll be with are not going to appreciate what you're bringing, then I would say probably leave it back, Understand that where you're going, you're going to want to get your grubby, barbecue, sticky fingers around a nice beer as opposed to, a more expensive Bordeaux. Or if you truly feel like you will not be able to enjoy yourself without some of your own wine that you bring with you, understand that there may be people there who want to try it as well. So bring enough to share.
Let's also not forget, if you feel that you cannot have a good time at a barbecue without French wine being involved at the same time, I mean,
you might be the problem.
You might be the problem. In Napa, I could understand. Portugal, okay, but France and
not exactly known for their barbecue, at least the last time I checked. Although their rotisserie chicken.
Can you barbecue in cream? Did I miss that? Also not known for animal rights when it comes to culinary delights.
Yeah, I know. What are those little birds, the tiny birds?
No, the ortolans.
The ortolans, yeah. This is the ones that are force-fed.
No, they're not. They're not force-fed.
They're caged.
They are caged.
Yeah.
They're not force-fed. What they do is, so for those who don't know, the ortolan is
blind.
Yes, that's what it is.
So they can feed them as much as they want to feed them.
They don't have to. So the ortolan is a bird that is a tiny little songbird and is genetically predisposed to eat only at night. And the French realized, well, if you blind these little bastards, they will eat themselves to death because they think it's always night.
Yeah, that's
They're not-
feeding.
No, they're not force fed. They just do it to themselves because they're dumb birds.
Well, fine. Either way,
But they get blinded much like you.
the if
Friendly reminder that everyone only has one eye, and the one he does have is
suspect.
suspect. Yes, highly suspect.
But no, I mean, whatever. Not to get into animal rightsy or the whatever.
Those little bastards, they eat until they die, and then they're incredibly puffed up and fat because all they've done from birth to death is eat themselves.
Now, allegedly a delicacy
Allegedly a delicacy.
and technically not legal
Right.
in France.
And then they will deep fry them, or I believe it's usually deep fried.
Either deep fried or roasted with a bunch of other stuff. And then you're supposed to basically dunk them into your mouth, eat them in one go.
And you're supposed to, at the same time, put a towel, blanket, something over your head
Yes.
to hide your shame from God.
Those of you who maybe are familiar with Anthony Bourdain may have read his at least 2 books. I know that
He had choice words on the orderly.
Well, he did try it though, and said it was he understood the delicacy.
Well, then let's not go down that path.
Anyway.
It ends in foie gras no matter what we do. So let me see here. We have one final question. I've been given tickets to a tasting menu at a 3 Michelin star restaurant.
Oh, wow.
Is it pretentious to bring a small notebook to jot down the dishes, or is that simply too much?
No, I feel like this is an easy question to answer. No,
Yes, absolutely.
not pretentious at all. I mean, look, is that more or less pretentious than taking pictures of each of the dishes that you're served? And then,
Oh, I hate that. Just enjoy the fucking moment.
yeah.
Now, pretentious? No. Autistic?
No, hey, look, just because it is not unusual to want to preserve for posterity's sake or so that you can recall upon it more easily later, the goings on of the event that you're experiencing, especially at a 3 Michelin factor.
And you think, and you think too, if it's a tasting menu, there probably isn't anything written down. So, the server comes, they tell you what you're about to eat, and then you eat it. I would like, a little list of what I had just to recall later.
I would think for the cost of whatever you might be spending that night, that a little list or a retrospective for you to bring home, would be something.
Harbinger used to do that.
They did, and it was,
Sure did.
obviously they were not the James Beard nominee, or James Beard winner, I believe.
Nominee, I believe, which is a damn shame.
A damn shame.
Or actually, I believe runner-up was true.
Yeah, but considering how good that restaurant is. I venture to say you could even bring a little recorder, because when the servers come around and present each dish to you, and they inevitably, verbalize what's in the dish and how it's prepared and that kind of thing, you could at least have it. Then that way you could replay it back at a later date and recall exactly what it was that you had without having to try to jot it down hastily or anything like that.
And I stand by this when I think you're with me, that every time I've been to that restaurant has been one of the most memorable restaurant experiences of my life.
Absolutely. I could not speak highly enough of Harbinger. Of the number of times that we have been there, it has been always an outstanding experience.
For reference to the fine viewers, Harbinger is in Des Moines, Iowa, a city of which neither of us live in. However, we've been to the restaurant more than a handful of times, I can say that much.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the epitome of fine dining, with a great respect to the region and the ingredients that are native to that region being the Midwest. Fantastic every single time. The menu changed, weekly, if not. Elements would change weekly based on availability. Core items would hold seasonal.
Seasonally, yeah. Every time I had been back, it was always a different menu, and the quality of the food that came out and the creativity in terms of each dish preparation or the construction of each dish was always so enjoyable. And there were individual plates that I remember having that were the best versions of that type of thing that I have ever had.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And at a price point, you absolutely could not beat. What was it was like $150 for the 7-course with pairing.
Well, that was when you and I first discovered them back in, what was that, 2017, 2016, something like that.
But even
They have upped their prices.
if you, even if they're charging double there now, which I know they're not, but even if they were to charge double, you're still paying considerably less than like the Alinea experience. And
Oh,
you know,
sure.
like $1,000 a person.
Sure. I mean, look, you can go and just get the tapas and get individual plates
Or the dim sum.
if you didn't want to get the full chef's tasting with wine pairing, which is not necessary. You can still taste individual small plates that you could pick out of the chef's tasting that they would otherwise prepare for you, and have a great experience for not too much money. And they're really, really good at what they're doing there.
But if it's date night, especially mandate night,
Ooh, man,
can't discount enough how important the mandate is.
mandate.
You take your wives, you take your girlfriends, you take your girlfriend when your wife's away, to do something fun. Take your bro out, get dressed up, go have the souffle, go do some fine dining, get a bottle of wine. That's your homie. That's the dude that's been there since day one. Take that. I guarantee you, you take a homie out and, maybe you get a little gay, maybe not, whatever. It's Tuesday. Nobody's questioning anymore. It's current year.
The wives are gone.
The wives are gone, Take a homie out. Take your bro out. Have a mandate. You got to mandate a mandate.
I will say the desserts also, they were fantastic.
They were.
Nothing wrong with going to a place that does tapas like that and just getting drinks and dessert at the bar.
I know, which they encourage.
Yes. Very.
So, dear listener,
roundabout way of answering that question.
right about way to answer that question. Absolutely yes. 100%. Do what you got to do.
Also, look, because I would say at the end of the day, food, the culinary experience is a hobby to a large extent. Don't be overly pretentious about it. Don't be overly obvious about it. Obviously, don't disturb your fellow guests or, the people who are also eating there. But we care about these things, and other people, the listeners, we know you care about it too. That's why you're listening to this podcast. And so look, if there is something that heightens your enjoyment of the experience, then by all means do that thing, as long as it's respectful.
Like LSD.
No comment.
With that being said, this is the last of the summer wine, bud, the end of the bottle.
Oh,
cheers. Final notes on the earthquake.
Just overall, as it's opened up, more enjoyable even than it was when we initially commented on it earlier on in the podcast, I will say. Just the hour or so that it's taken to breathe more, and as the previous questioner asked, is it possible to breathe too much? In this case, no.
No, it's gone from bright. It's lost its brightness, I would say, and traded it in for a little velvetiness.
I completely agree.
Which is not a loss. It's just a transition.
I think it's better, personally.
Oh, arguably.
Yeah.
Well, the legs are even showing through a little bit more as I rotate the glass. I know you can't see on the live feed because we don't have one, but just believe we are drinking delicious wine.
I would say it has mellowed out substantially. Brightness was a good descriptor for what it was in the beginning, and instead now it's a bit more well composed, I would say.
And the only way that you can really come to a true understanding of what we mean when we say these things is, gosh darn it, get out there and drink more wine. If you think we're full of shit and you don't like this bottle, then, well, sorry, you're out $20. But find one that you do like, send it into us, and then you know what? We might try it.
Yes, please write to us.
We've taken listener recommendations before.
Please write to us. We enjoy the comments.
We absolutely do.
Good, bad, and the ugly.
So, as we finish this bottle, I'll go into a little bit about our premiere bottle tonight. So number one, this is Amarone della Valpolicella by Luigi Righetti. This is an Italian wine. Now, Luigi Righetti, I looked up, not actually the winemaker. He's who started the wine in 1909.
1909.
So
truly a preeminent.
Kind of like Robert Mondavi, right? You've got the Mondavi wines out there, like, So Luigi Righetti, the Righetti family, this is who's making this wine. The grapes are harvested and dried for several months, usually typically 3 to 4, by ventilating in dry rooms. This concentrates the sugars and the flavors, resulting in a rich, bold wine. This is called the appassimento method. This is an Italian winemaking method. This is a red blend. It's got several grape varieties in it. These are all Italian varietals. Corvino, excuse me. This is the backbone of the wine. Some structure, some body, some sour cherry flavors you might notice. Corbinone, which is going to add a little depth to some tannins. And then Rondinea, which offers soft fruitiness and balance. And then the Molinara, which is added in and adds a hint of acidity to the blend. They age this typically for 2 to 3 years. Can you grab that bottle? I don't remember what year we got on there. What year? Let's see here. What was our year on this? 2020. Oh, that's the earthquake.
Oh, excuse me. That's right. I should have known by the lightness.
See, every doing this is a 2020. All right, so
1 year older than the
1 year older than the year. That's right. Yep. So just a little bit about this particular wine. This is kind of known for being in the Verone region, the Veneto region, which is near the city of Verona. It's going to be, if you know anything about Italy, there's hardly any flat land anywhere. So this is a particularly mountainous, hilly region here. That is known for growing those particular varietals well. What sets the Amarone apart particularly is the fact that they dried these grapes on straw mats instead of the ventilated drying room, which is unique to the Righetti family way of doing wine. Their goal with this wine is to present a intense yet balanced, luxurious, and approachable wine that is a testament to the region, the winemaker, and the noble varietals that create this unforgettable elixir. So with that, let's finish our earthquake.
Yes, let's.
Quite enjoyable.
Absolutely enjoyable. And we'll move on to the Amarone. Price point, what did we take for this?
It was $35.
$35. So again, we're not really breaking the bank with this, but if you want something Italian and you want something pretty and dark and red and robust and full-bodied, this is going to be a particularly good wine for you.
Now, hold on. Before we get into that, let's just remind the listeners that we picked up both of these bottles at our own local independent wine shop.
That's right. We did shop independent for this. If we can find it there, there's a good chance you can find it. If you have a Total Wine or something that stocks, a massive amount of bottles, there's a pretty good chance. I'll be honest, our local wine retailer, we are blessed with having here locally someone that really loves to specialize in not just the big California bottles that sell well, but also curating a collection of wine from around the world that is all fantastic.
Some curiosities.
And a lot of curiosities.
Yes, and some interesting things. So it's quite nice.
Exactly. So I feel that we are exceptionally blessed in that regard. Not to mention the staff there, absolutely fantastic, knows what the hell they're talking about. I don't think I've ever had a bad recommendation. For as much wine as we drink, we had not drank at all. Not yet. So we are always looking for suggestions, especially those undervalued, lower price bottles punching way above their weight grade. Memory goes back to the Candle Magic that was a $5 bottle that might as well have been $50.
Was that $5?
It was $5.
That is so funny to think back to that.
And I didn't even pay $5 for it. I think I paid like $3.99.
Even if it was more,
when it was $5 retail, and then it was discounted. The guy I was
trying to move it.
Yeah, just trying to get it done through their distributor.
Yeah.
Oh boy, was that a good wine.
Well, and just to remind the listeners again, what is this label?
This is from Capital dei Rari, Amarone della Valpolicella. I probably absolutely butchered that a minute ago.
I will say, the very first thing I noticed And obviously, different grape type, obviously different region, California versus Italy, but immediately different on the nose right away. Definitely a more expensive nose quality than you would typically tend to
You
get.
can also tell this is grown at a higher altitude. And for those of you wondering, how do you know that? This is a fun party trick. You get your nose deep into the glass. If you smell fresh grapes on the vine, chances are, number one, it's a Napa bottle. And chances are, while it's grown at altitude, it's not grown at as high an altitude as it could be. If you smell more along the lines of earthy, funky, more like take the grapes off the vine and you just smell the stem, now we're talking about a higher altitude, which I believe, tell me if I'm wrong, that's not an incorrect description of the nose.
No, I would agree that is definitely what this tends to smell like. And I would say that's also somewhat similar to the Pacific Northwest wines that we have had in the past.
That are Russian River Valleys, Colombian River Valley cabs, those higher in tannins, higher in acid cabs, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's what I'm getting, at least in terms of quality here with this. I haven't even tasted it yet, but I can tell you it's a smell, and this may be a little ignorant of me. I mean, I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination, but a smell that I would typically tend to associate with a higher price point wine.
Yes, well, yeah, definitely. A 35, I feel, well, based on the tasting we had of this, is a good price point for it.
Yeah, you're starting to get towards into the smell or taste or quality category of a more expensive wine at this point.
And as far as the pairing goes for this, number one, lamb, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
And number two, if you can get yourself a good block, off the block Parmigiano Reggiano cheese would go absolutely fantastic with this. But I can't stress this enough, like a braised lamb shank and this wine are almost made for each other. Ev, tasting notes, what are you thinking?
I just took my first sip, and immediately it is such a nice quality. It is not as, I don't want to say that the Earthquake was thick necessarily. This is slightly thinner, but not in a bad way. And the flavor is robust.
Yeah, robust is an excellent word for that.
Very well balanced. There is, if we're talking about like equalizers and audio, for example, there is nothing out of tune with the flavor that I'm getting from this at all.
We're rolling full stereo right now.
Mm-hmm.
What I will say about the big difference between this and the Earthquake, which I would argue is not so endemic of the wine or the varietal, but more so the region, which is those big those big California bottles. And when I say big, I don't mean big in price point, but I mean bold, juicy, fruit forward. They have a tendency to kind of coat the tongue and leave kind of like a velvet layer on top that just kind of keeps you salivating.
I'm nodding my head. You can't see me, but that's, yep.
This is almost the opposite. This almost pulls all of the moisture out of your tongue and makes you say, oh, I almost go out dry mouth. Like I need another sip because it is very dry.
But not in an unpleasant.
No, not in an nothing about that is unpleasant. It's just the mouthfeel that can be between, especially different regions and different varietals, but I would say it's more prevalent as you move from region to region. The mouthfeel will change. It is a completely different mouthfeel, and this is very endemic of an Italian or a French wine, or even maybe, dare I say, Lebanese.
Oh, yeah, I was going to actually...
Chateau Moussard. It reminded me of Chateau Moussard a little bit.
Yes, I completely agree. And not to belabor the audio metaphor too hard here, but if maybe I could make a comparison for those people who know audio out there. If the Napa, and especially the cabs, if the Napa bottles are like that, got that in headphones, that big room sound, this is that more symphonic, true sort of realistic sound representation rather than sort of that bigger echoey room that you sometimes hear on different headphones. And it's not bad. Neither one has been necessarily better than the other, but this is certainly a more sultry quality of musicality. Certainly the melody really comes through in a really balanced way here with this.
Yeah, if we'll go punk rock with it. If Earthquake is the Ramones, the Amarone is the Smiths. Both excellent in their own right, but completely different flavors and profiles there.
This is less sweet, I would say, on the front of the tongue than the Earthquake was. I would just say if you were to blindfold me, and obviously I have the benefit of hindsight of knowing which wine was which, this would taste like the higher quality one, if I just had to be honest. Again, that's not to say that at the $20 that the Earthquake is not a good buy and that it's not enjoyable. Absolutely, it's enjoyable. But this is certainly, to me, a more well-rounded experience overall.
I will say one thing, is that the Earthquake will be pleasing to far more people.
Yes.
This is a step up in the wine ladder, meaning it's kind of like, remember your first beer, you get that sip of Coors Light and you're like, why the fuck would anybody drink this? Like, what are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you drink some beer and, you work your way up to, like a chocolate stout or something. You don't just start off enjoying that. I would say this is not, if I was someone who did not drink wine, I probably would not enjoy this as much. Mainly because I wouldn't know what, number one, you'd have to enjoy wine to begin with. This is a wine drinker's wine. To be able to have the palate to deconstruct the flavor profiles that are running amok here. We're not playing in Coors Light territory anymore. We moved up a little bit.
That's an interesting conversation to get into, though, because while I agree in part with you that this is not necessarily a quote-unquote amateur's wine, I will say you need to try a lot of wine before you really understand what it is you like, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And I remember a time when I was younger and did not enjoy wine, and I still remember it was a Malbec that was the first wine I ever really enjoyed, and I remember it was my first sip of that wine where I went, gosh, I didn't know wine could taste like this. And that was it. That was my first, thank you very much for the report, I appreciate it. That was the first thing that introduced to me that wine could be as enjoyable as that Malbec was. And I kicked myself for not remembering what it was that I had tried at the time. But, and certainly same thing with beer. I mean, it was a Hefeweizen that was the first beer. And I remember it was in October.
Was that the first beer you've ever had or the first beer you liked?
The first beer that I liked. And so to your point, you have to sort of get through tasting other beers or tasting other wines. Obviously, a lot of people listening can relate to this, I'm sure. But I think maybe wine is a bit more difficult to get into than beer to a certain extent. There's certainly, in my mind, more out there in terms of selection that you could have to wade through before you find what
I should argue is kind of the same now. Pre-craft beer revolution, sure, you didn't really have that much beer to choose from. But imagine your first beer's an IPA. That's love. It's love or hate at first.
Oh yeah, it's a very polarizing.
You're either all about that or, and I would argue, if your first beer is an IPA, that could turn you off beer forever. Even though had you started with something easier, you may have worked your way up and been like, okay, I actually understand and like this now.
Yeah. You if you encounter beer and wine as you're just starting out and it's something that you're not enjoying at all, you really, if it's something you care about getting into, you do kind of have to push through and continue trying, so to speak. But I know we kind of got a little bit off tangent.
No, it's okay to. It's important for especially the listener. The listener who is new to wine, there is no right or wrong. If a Boone's Farm's wrong.
Well, look,
Yellowtail is wrong.
Well, wrong from whose perspective? And look, and I understand it's not
the perspective of, for the same price point, you could have an actually decent bottle of wine.
That's fair, but I go back to my grandfather, our grandfather, Poppy, R.I.P. That was his wine of choice. He did not care about expensive wine. He could occasionally appreciate a slightly more expensive wine.
Juice.
Towards the end, but back in the day, that was what he drank. He drank straight, cheap wine. And I don't think he necessarily cared that much about, what it was he was drinking, but he did enjoy it.
But let's give Poppy credit where his credit was due. Poppy may not have drank wine based on a palate that could discern any difference between varietals, but that man could absolutely tell you the difference between Prince Edward Island and a Malbec and a Blue Point oyster, probably blindfolded.
Yes.
So he had the palate. It was just for salty, briny things.
Yes.
Also, real quick, as always, as we do in the month of February, we will be going over very soon our Salute to Fish episode, All Things from the Sea, as we round out and end oyster season in the month of February. Really, it should be December, but January and February are cold enough that we're good enough that we can still get some of those good oysters down here. And it might not be over, but Christmas Day for me is always the beginning of stone crab season.
Oh.
We are only a few months away from May 1st, beginning that beautiful time of stone crab and ahi tuna season.
We'll have to get some of that here and also have perhaps Rachel on the podcast as a little guest star as we make some of the food and try some of that here. I think that could be fun.
Rachel, of course, for those of you listening, our in-house chef here, guest star on multiple episodes. Recently on our Mardi Gras episode where she made a delicious and heart-healthy gumbo for us and also the unheart-healthy gumbo. It's important that you do both.
Yes. Yeah. As in life, balance in all things.
Balance in all things. Well, before we finish out this episode, any final thoughts on the Amarone here, besides the fact that it's absolutely fantastic?
I don't have much experience with Italian wine, I have to be honest with you. I'm usually an American wine boy, and specifically a Pacific Northwest enjoyer, and also occasionally South American wine enjoyer as well. But I have to say, this is, if someone were to say to me, this is what Italian wine is like, I would want to try more Italian wine. That's for sure.
Absolutely. I think we get fed some very cheap stuff when it comes to Italian wine. Chianti is not the end all. So we'll just leave it at that. He's a little super Tuscan.
Well, it doesn't help that when you go to Italian restaurants, especially at certain price points, that they have a table wine, and hey, a place in time for table wine, not above a good table wine. However, it happens to usually be a Chianti, and it usually happens to be really thin and not
you know what?
overly, not.
And that upsets me. We do a table wine episode at least once a year, sometimes twice, because we've found some really fantastic table wines out there. And we always tell you the price point. That's the point of table wine, is that it is cheap. It is the first bottle you have, but it doesn't have to be bad. And I feel like the majority of those, especially the big box Italian restaurants, the Olive Garden,
The Buca di Beppo. Although Buca does have easy.
Buca di Beppo will always have a special place in my heart because that is the most true to form Italian experience I think you can have in America. And I say this growing up, going to my grandfather and my great-grandfather, Sam Galzerano's place. And Italians cut corners all the time. They have gaudy decorations. Everything's you're cooking, you don't make, and there's a point of contention between Rachel and myself, was whenever I'd make pasta, I'd make a fuck ton of it. Why? Because then you've got it for the week.
Yeah.
But why don't you just make enough noodles for this serving? And I'm like, that's not the point. It's pasta for the week.
Yeah.
I made sauce for the week. We're eating this all week. What do you mean all week? I'm like, it's tonight. It's dinner tomorrow night. It's dinner on Thursday. But it's hopefully will last us until Friday. And she's like, I can't do that. I can't eat pasta 5 nights in a row.
And it's funny because you say that, Nanny and Poppy, she would make enough meatballs and enough, they called it macaroni, enough macaroni for, again, multiple servings.
Yes.
And it was never a situation where, because again, if she would be like, are you so hungry? Do you want more food? You should never have finished a single meal hungry.
No.
And there would be enough of it for multiple days.
Exactly.
So I'm 100% with you.
So, good to Beppo. The fact that it's always family style, you know, and they've got the decorations down. They've got the feel of it down, and I hate it because they're a big chain restaurant. But
Yeah, you don't want to like it.
no, but they've encapsulated a part of my childhood that's very hard to replicate.
Yes, it is. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I mean, you know, it's a
Not in the way that there's something inherently wrong with Olive Garden.
I was just gonna say the same thing. 110%.
But unless you take it for what it is, which is you go there for lunch, unlimited soup, salad, and breadsticks.
Yes. There and again, that is a quintessential American experience.
Oh yeah, that's not Italian at all. It is an American experience.
No, I would hesitate to even call it Italian American. If anything, it's American Italian.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, you can go and for not very much money, get quite a lot of food, feed your family, and have an enjoyable experience and walk away satisfied.
Exactly. Final thoughts for the day, Ev.
Oh man, I have to say, you know, it had been some time since I had had the earthquakes in, and like we had mentioned earlier in the podcast, you know, our perspective is that the earthquake Zen specifically is a little better, maybe, or more preferable to the earthquake cab. Is it as good as I remember it? You know, granted, we didn't have any pairings necessarily with this tonight. We weren't drinking it with a meal, which could possibly affect the taste as well. I liked it. Would it be something I would want to see or that I want to pay more than $20 for? Honestly, if I tell you my honest opinion, no. I think $20 is
it's perfect. It's
the
priced.
price point.
But have you spent more for less?
Yes, I have.
Then there's the problem.
That is the problem. I have definitely spent $25, $30, $35, $40 for bottles that I did not like as much as the earthquakes in. And then wrapping it up with, again, please remind me of
The Amarone.
the Amarone. Very enjoyable.
Yes.
Very enjoyable. This is one of those questions, the age-old question of diminishing returns, right? $20 for the earthquake Zen, and granted, it's a different varietal, in an obviously different country of origin, versus the Amarone at $35 from Italy. You know, it almost 100% as expensive, right? Twice as expensive, almost. Are you getting almost twice as good of a wine in the Amarone as you are on the earthquake Zen? Not necessarily. However, it is noticeably better in terms of its drinkability and overall quality.
I would agree. To that point, the earthquake is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm never not going to enjoy earthquake. The earthquake cab is what got me into wine. Even though I like the earthquake Zen better. Earthquake cab was the first bottle I drank where I was like, oh, this doesn't just taste like dry asshole.
I didn't know that about, I didn't realize that was,
So, I mean, I was like maybe 22.
well, yeah, that was,
But prior to that, the only wine I'd had was like my mom would keep local raspberry wine in the fridge. But it wasn't sweet wine. It was dry raspberry wine. And it was like,
really?
It was bad.
I,
It was bad.
it is interesting.
And then I had had like communion wine and others.
As we all did.
Like, and I'd had sips of stuff that my mom had that wasn't raspberry wine, but wasn't good because she just was like, oh, this label looks neat. And it's only $7.
Which, let's be fair, just for listeners, the sake of the listeners out there, and also ourselves, nothing wrong with choosing a wine based on the label.
Buy a wine by the label, but if it's bad, don't buy it.
Learn your lesson and move on.
Learn your lesson. So I just had never really had anything that was good wine. And then I had the earthquake cab, and I was like, oh, I like this.
Mm.
And I like this on a level beyond I'm just trying to get fucked up. Because I was 22. Most of the times if I was drinking alcohol, it's just trying to get fucked up. As you do when you're 22.
Sure.
But I was like, man, I could really just sit and enjoy this. And it's the same thing when you smoke a fantastic cigar. You're not inhaling the cigar. You're not getting a nicotine buzz. You're able to just sit and enjoy and contemplate the complexity of the flavors, the aroma, the mouthfeel. It's very similar. There's a lot of crossover between cigars and wine. And I would argue any fine spirit, fine whiskey, fine gin. And that does, again, doesn't, not implying a high price point, although the two overlap. There are plenty of good products out there in any of those subcategories that do not require a lot of investment in terms of capital from the buyer.
Yeah, that are reasonably priced.
And as everything we do in this show, it only has to look and taste expensive. One of my favorite bottles, and I'll talk about it till the end of there. There's 19 Crimes. It's mass-produced Australian wine, but it's good.
Mm-hmm.
It's way better than anything else with a $10 price point, with the exception of Moon X from Trader Joe's, which is the only place I've seen that. And we're going to get into that in a different show.
Mm-hmm.
Again, ending thoughts. As always, it only has to look expensive. It only has to taste expensive. Nobody has to know what you paid. And our goal on this show is to, for the most part, bring you accessible wine. Now, we do have the VIP, the High Roller show we do once a year, where we go into those more exceptional, higher priced bottles. And granted, we can only really afford to do that once.
We, just like the average listeners, are.
The average listener, yes. We are constrained by our own financial ability. I'd love to have a show where all we did was review like premier labels.
That would be great. And if someone's willing to finance such an episode, please get in touch.
Again, if you're buying, we're selling out.
But to jump off of what Ethan was saying, our purpose here is to try to help people discover new wines at reasonable price points and hopefully have a good time.
And not just wine. Port, from whence we get our namesake, the Port Authority Podcast. We started this off as just a port podcast, but that's not that.
There's only so much of it.
There's only so much port, and God damn it, we love all of it.
It's great, and it's fantastic, and that's why we named the podcast such. But
we've had wine that we don't like.
Yes, there's a lot of it that's not good.
But have you ever had a port you don't like?
No, I've had
port I like better than another port.
Yes, and I'll be a little snobby and say I feel like there are very few ports that are only ruby or only tawny, meaning that they're not aged port, or they're not aged more than 3 to 5 years. Because
those ruby ports we had in Jerome,
in Jerome, Arizona,
wonderful.
Jerome, Arizona, some of those more immature, shall we say, ports were very decent.
They drank like a tawny.
Yeah, and I would say at Costco. Costco's got some decent.
But the Kirkland 20-year tawny.
The Kirkland 10, and I think they also have either a Kirkland 20, something like that. Either maybe there's a Kirkland 20, I can't remember. But the Kirkland 10 is very decent. Very drinkable, very serviceable for after dinner with a dessert or something along those lines, or to use in a dessert if you're cooking with a dessert. Although I'd say
we're going on a port tangent.
It is. Portent. Trying to do final thoughts. Both very enjoyable bottles. Both different price points. $20 obviously more serviceable than $35. But if you're maybe looking for a special occasion wine, and $30 to $40 really suits your price point, then this Amarone, I mean, man, I'm really pleasantly surprised by this bottle.
Well, I can hear the outro music playing. That means it's time for us to get going. But as always, I am Reverend Krause. With me is Evan Wheeler, reminding you to fight your battles in the sheets and make your loving in the sheets. Or what did I say? Fight your battles in the sheets and make your loving in the street.
Here we go.
I am Reverend Krause. With me as always, Mr. Evan Wheeler, signing off, reminding you that just like this podcast, a good bottle of wine is always shared best with good company.
Indeed. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
And have a good night, listeners.
Good night, listeners.